Hello everybody, welcome to this wonderful reading of Zoya. Basically in this reading, that this will be a Sunday reading of all of this. Sunday reading is for March 30th of 2025. So sorry that you might hear a lot of noise in the background. So sorry, I'm at a cafe shop. Okay. But anyway, in this wonderful reading, what we provide you is that this is how it's going to be in a wonderful setting. These things will be happening in a wonderful way of how it is. And when you have these things, you have to acknowledge on how it is one way or another. And when you do that, you have to believe and you have to get beyond that point of how it is. So we're going to look at every single zodiac sign, what's going on through that entire way. Basically, this is a very format of how everything is, and you have to understand that, right? So there are things that you must learn in order to understand it, like where you have to discover yourself, whether you find, there's always a silver lining with every single situation, whether if you're in a romantic setting or not, whatever it is. But it all depends on you. It all depends on how everything is in that way, right? So everything has to be all crystal clear and everything else. But there are things that you must learn in order to understand that in various ways of understanding that, right? So there's lots of things. But you have to understand that there are things you must learn in order to do that. That's the way it goes. So this oracle card says self-esteem. I possess gifts of the soul that benefit me and others. When you have self-esteem, you know the ability from that, and when things have to be in that way, you have to pay attention to how it is in that way. So when you have self-esteem, you have self-expression, or the way of how you can see it. So when things have to be in the right way, you have to think, okay, well, this is going to be imposed in that situation. This is the way it kind of goes. This is the way of how it's going to be in one way or another. So you have to understand that one way or another. So when you have self-esteem, you have the ability from that right and perspective way. That's the way it seems to be. Okay? So that's how it is. But the way of how this is based on how you can do it with one another, and that's just the way it goes. So I want to look at what's happening that way, and that's how it seems to be. So here we go. So basically, further ado with on the question, we have the Four of Pentacles. It does represent Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus. It does represent money in the situation because you need it, you want it, that's the way it goes. When you have wealth, you have ability from how you can understand that in that situation, whether things to be going the way of how you can master your own way, have your own empathy, your own way of how everything is, and you think that, okay, well, I got this, I know what to do. But when you have your own self-esteem, when you have things to be astonishing to you, everything has to be in the right moment, right? So like give it time, give it the way of how you can praise that ability from that perspective. Things will be in that place, in that moment of time, and saying, all right, well, this is the way how it is. This is beyond that point. It is, because that's the way it's in that format. So we're going to clarify. We're going to see who's on the left, and let's see who's on the right. Let's see who's on the left. So here we go. So I'm going to figure out who's on the left side. Ace of Cups reversed, while the Judgment is upright, while the Three of Swords is upright. So there's going to be heartbreak, you're going to take action on it, that's the way it goes. Because you're going to be whimpering, maybe you're feeling sad because things are not going as planned, that's the way it goes. So you have to understand that in that way. You have to think that why I'm feeling sad, why I'm feeling annoyed, why I'm feeling all these things. Because there are things that you need to understand where you have to understand it, right? So when you look at this, you think, okay, well, everything's fine. But you could be dealing with Gemini, Libra, Aquarius as air signs, as earth signs, and that's how it seems to be. What's happening on the right side? The star reversed, followed with the 10 Pentacles is upright, followed with 2 of Swords is upright. So you don't know which direction you're going to take, left or right, but you have to make your own decisions in that way. 10 Pentacles, it does represent money and not wealth. Ability from that, because that's the way it goes in the way of how it seems to be. So you don't know, when you have the 2 of Swords upright, you don't know which direction you're going to take, but want to clarify that. So the 2 Pentacles is upright, followed by the 2 of Cups is upright. So the 2 Pentacles does represent where you're going to be balancing 2 things at once. That's the way it goes. The 2 of Cups represents relationships, friendships, ability from that. Because you have to think, okay, well, I know what to do, I got this, I can feel it, I can understand the way of how this is. It's very enticing. So, you have to believe on how everything is in that way. You have to think about, oh, this is the way it goes. I need to do this. I need to intervene. I need to pay attention. That's the way it goes in that way. Because, things have to be in the way of how you can understand them. Whether you have whether you're having your own well-being. That's the way it goes. Because you have to face your own abilities from that perspective. That's the way it goes. So let me clarify. Who's in the middle? Real fortune upright. So you're going to have good luck on your side. What's up with this real fortune card? The sun is upright, so there's positivity. Taurus is upright, there's progress. Death card represents endings. That's the way it goes. So you could be focusing on Leo as a fire sign. You could be focusing on Scorpio as a water sign. That's the way it goes. What's happening on the right side, please? The Fool is upright, so there's going to be change. The High Priestess reversed. Above the Empress upright. So you're gonna have structure. You're gonna have that. The High Priestess reversed. You're not having any inner voice because that's the way it goes. And you think, oh well, this is not going to end well. It's not because that's the way it seems to be in that way. And you think that everything seems to be fine. That's the way it goes. What's happening in the middle? This time again, the Hangman is upright. So there's a restriction. The Death card represents ending. The Sun reverse, there's a negativity. The Justice is upright, you're going to take action, right? That's the way it goes. The Star is upright, there's inspiration. The World is upright, there's completion. The High Priest of yours, you're not using your inner voice. Emperor is upright, you're going to have structure. That's the way it goes in that way, because everything has to be all neat and tidy, and the nitty-gritty of that situation. Because that's the way kind of how you can do it one way or another. So you have to believe in what you're looking for in that based on how it is. So let's see. Let's see who's on the left side, please. Five of Swords reverse. Okay, on the right side. Ace of Wands reverse. So there's going to be no beginnings, no conflict. That's the way it goes in that way. You think that, oh well, this is not going to end well. It's not, because you're focusing on how you can do it in that you have to use your own visionary time. You have to know what's going on from your strengths or weaknesses, your abilities from the left, right, and center situation. The centerpiece, meaning back to work, but then you have to provide what you're looking for in that way, because things have to be all, how you can do it in one way or another, and you think, okay, well, everything's going to be fine. That's the way it kind of goes. So what's happening on the left side? Okay, on the card that represents that face. Queen of Pentacles here, so there's no stability. What's happening on the right side? The Pentacles here, there's no empathy. Alright, what's in the middle? The Four of Wands is alright, so there's no celebration. Okay, so what's this Queen of Pentacles about? Two Taurus, sorry, you're going to have to crossroads. And Page of Cups, alright, so basically, you have loyalty, okay, you're acting like you're being loyal, you're being how you can be sincere, that's the way it goes. That's the way it's going to be in that way, because that's how you can understand that. So when you have your loyalty, that's the way it goes. What's happening between the two swords? Three of Pentacles upright, so there's excitement. In reverse, there's no stillness. Seven of Pentacles upright, there's vision. Yeah, because you're looking for your career, right? That's the way it goes, because you're focusing on that. So you could be focusing on a Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus. You're focusing on Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio. You're focusing on a Leo, Aries, Sagittarius. So there are things they need to understand that in that way, because you have to do that logical form of how it is, because that's the way it goes. This could be like a manuscript. This is how you can process with your own abilities. That's the way it goes. What's the Four of Wands about? King of Wands reverse, so there's no charisma. Strength card reverse, there's no bravery. Eight of Wands is upright, so there's speed. Yeah, that's the way it goes, because that's how it is. When you feel like there's no bravery, there's no charisma, you're being afraid, or you don't know what to do, because that's the way it seems to be. Because that's the way it needs to be in that format, because you think, oh well, this is not going to end well. It's not, because you're focusing on what to do next. That's the way it needs to be in that way. When you have your own desires, you know what to do, but then you have to face on that ability from that own perspective. That's the way it goes. When you feel like everything seems to be fine, and that's the way it goes, that's the way it seems to be. What's happening between this country? Three Wands reverse, there's no communication. The Emperor reverse, there's no start with this last sentence. So, when you're not communicating, it's not very good in that way. You think that, well, this is not going to end well, because you're focusing on that. You're focusing on how you can do it in one way or another. You have to believe that you can do it in one way or another. You have to focus on that. Focus about how you can feel. Focus on how you be wanted and how you can proceed with caution, Because when you have that ability, from you focusing on your career, you're focusing on your speed of life, or whatever it is, you're focusing on how it is. And you have to understand about how you can understand, because there are things that you need to ability from understanding, and you have to be cautious of what you're doing, because this is the way it needs to be. Everything has to be all, how you can be, because everything is not random. This is not how it is. You have to believe that everything has to be all good, right? That's why this is not short and sweet, because you have to understand that this is how you can understand how you're feeling, how you feel wanted, how you feel anxiety, whatever it is, because you have to believe that you can do it. That's the way it seems to be. That's the way of how it goes, because you have to focus on that. Focus about the right possessions that you need, or the gifts, or whatever it is, because you have to proceed about that. Because when you focus about, when you're reading the Bible and it says, ask and you shall receive, or you're receiving gifts or whatever, that's how it seems to be in that way, where you have prosperity, when you get what you want, whatever it is, because you have to do that, right? That's why when you need to express yourself, you're expressing yourself in a different way, a different manner, a different, how you do it, another organization, whatever it is, right? But you have to proceed about the ability from that right and left perspective. That's the way it goes. So you have to focus on how it's going to be in that moment. You have to focus and believe in yourself. You have to believe what you're doing, and you have to do that. That's the way it goes. So we're going to see what one of the oracle cards says. So let's see. And then they're going to figure out who's the zodiac signs after that. So let's see. So let's see last time. The Swan Queen, transformation, intuition, patience. That's the way it goes. Where everything can be transforming. You could be having your own patience, and you're using your intuition, because you're going to be using your own gut feelings in exactly way. Because that's how it seems to be, right? So, but things have to be the right way. That's the way it goes. Because you think, okay, well, I know what to do. I got this. I know how I can understand this. This is the way it seems to be. Because you focus. Focus on what you want. Focus on what you need. Focus on how it is. That's the way it seems to be. Because you need to understand that, right? You have to focus about that. When you're being patient, when you have your own intuition, your gut feelings, whatever it is, that's the way it goes. Because everything has to be transforming. That's the way it goes, right? What's the next one? In the middle. It says, the sun dancer. Joyful activity, celebration of life, abundance. Yeah, so you'd be looking for that prosperity, because you're focusing on getting your own money or your own way. You're focusing on how it is in that way. So you could be focusing on how things are in that way, and you do that as the way of how it goes, because that's what it seems to be in that format, because that's the way it ends up being in. Okay? And on the right side, you have the Phoenix. Resurrection, surrender to change. Yeah, so you could be maybe surrendering about change, because that's the way it goes. When you surrender, things are not going as planned, things are not going as your way or your direction, but you have to focus on that. Focus about how you can understand that, where you have to see it in order to believe it in that way, right? You think that, okay, Lord, this will be fine, or feeling wanted, or whatever it is, that's the way it goes. But when you accept change, or when you surrender to change, you don't want change to happen. You don't. But things will change. That's the way it goes. Okay? Let's see what the zodiac signs are. So let's see on the left side. You have the King of Earth. generous, professional, responsible, practical. Asexual time, confidently accept opportunities you offer to myself. That's the way it goes, where you have to focus on that. So when things have to be there, where you're being generous, or you're being kind, or you're being wanted, that's the way it goes. Where you're feeling that ability from to understand, that's the way it goes. So this could be where you're believing that everything has to be fine, but then it will be interesting. So you could deal with your Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus, that sort of thing. Okay. What's in the middle? You have the strength card, Archangel Ariel. Great inner strength, release harsh judgment, forgiveness, and compassion. That's the way it goes, where you could be focusing on your harsh judgments, or things are not going as planned, things are not going your way. But then you have to pay attention about how you can do it, how you can focus about having that strength. If you're feeling like you're being brave, or you're not being brave, and things are not going as that, that's the way it goes, where you're focusing on that ability from how you can do that in that way, right? So you have to focus on that, okay? And last but not least, on the right side, you have renewal, Archangel Jeremiah. Review and evaluate. Favorable assessment of the facts. Time to move in a new direction. So you could review or evaluate your own ways about where you're renewal your own emotions, or your own feelings, or your own energies, whatever it is, because you have to focus on what you need, and what you want professionally, because that's how it seems to be in that note. So that's how it is. But anyway, this is how it is. Before I let you go, try to pay attention about this video. Try to focus about that. Focus on how things are in that way, and you have to focus about that, right? So, you have to believe that you can do it as long as it needs to, and that's the way it seems to be. So, I hope you all like this video. Please give it a like. Please give it a comment. I'm so sorry that there's a lot of noise in here, but that's how it seems to be in this way. So, this is the way it goes. I hope you can hear my voice, and I hope that you can understand that. That's how it seems to be, but that's how it seems to be in that way. But thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, y'all. And this is the way it goes, and this is how it seems to be. So, thank you so much. Have a good day. Thank you. Bye for now. Really, thanks, and bye.